Welcome to the Model Rail Replacement Podcast, helping you get to your onward journey. A friendly service that helps you get from A to B, or probably nowhere at all.
Hello and welcome to the Model Rail Replacement Podcast. I'm your host James, and with me is
Sam? That
you
was
forgot your
weird.
name there, didn't you?
Well, you threw me off because you just said "in with me is Sam." Like I'd lost all job titles. Am I? Do I not work for the Model Rail Replacement Podcast anymore?
I didn't say Sam. I stopped myself. I was about to say Sam, and then I stopped myself, and then
Yeah, but
and then just waited for you to fill in,
yeah,
and
but
that seems to have thrown you completely.
yeah.
And,
All right. Well, I'm going to stop this. I'm going to say co-host and producer Sam. Hello,
oh
everyone.
yeah, that sounds supposed to. Yeah. I'm not very bad this week.
No, you are very very poorly, and we're lucky to have you on today because
You are indeed, because as of about 3 days ago, I had no voice. So that would have been a rather dull podcast. Maybe improvement, some people may say. I don't know, but
I have a feeling that a lot of people would have switched off if they found out that the intro and outro was just me.
it's a very tiny whisper coming almost audible on the headset, but not quite there. But there we are. Yes. Right then, Sam. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I've had a week of hobby wise. I'm in a bit of turmoil. Everything will make sense in a couple of weeks, couple of months, who knows? But basically, hobby wise, I've just struggled with not necessarily the motivation. I've been excited about the hobby, um, and I sort of thought that we're going to talk about this in a second. But I thought that Bachmann's summer announcements would have rejuvenated and possibly given me something that would have gone, oh yeah, that's got me interested. But if anything, it's turned me off the idea of being in Double O right now. I mean, we have a
Have
plan.
you and Double O broken up? Is that what we're saying here?
Not officially. We're seeing other people.
I see.
We're not exclusive. Is that the right term? Was it? Yeah,
Yeah.
seeing other
Yeah.
people is the right term. We're in an open relationship.
Well, that would mean you're still trying to work things out together. I just don't think you're trying. That's the impression I get.
Do I need to go to
I think a younger, more slimmer, eh, model has taken your fancy,
look,
and
all
you've
right.
decided to leave OO. You're having a midlife crisis right now. That's
But
that's what's going on here.
but here's the thing. OO's been neglecting me. It hasn't been giving me the attention that I crave. It hasn't been giving me that va-va-voom that I have looked for in the last 30 years. And do you know
Just
what?
because it's not the correct scale to track, it can't help that. All right, when it was made, yeah, the motors were bigger. They were bigger back then.
Some of these things
Can't
just
help,
come with age.
you
That's just
can't help it.
this conversation. Like James and I didn't plan this. This is actually very off the cuff. But actually, what James is saying is very, very true. Um, those of you who might have seen, I've been selling quite a lot of my double O stock, mainly because I have a 12 track fiddle yard, but I have well over enough trains to fill the 12 track fiddle yard. So I've been reducing my stock and I've been trying to look at what I do use, what I don't use, and stuff like that. Which, when you don't have a layout connected or anything like that, it makes it very easy to go, do I need that? Don't I need that? Um, and James is right. Like the foreshadowing has been there. Um, 009 and TT at the moment are the things that I really, really like the look of. TT especially. So Peachy, I know you're listening. Thank you very much. Peachy sorted me out of my first ever TT gauge locos, and having the Hornby 00 gauge and the TT gauge class 50 and seeing them next to each other is fantastic. And I will say the level of detail that they've managed to get into the TT range is phenomenal. So hats off to them there. But I do also love the charm of 009 and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, so I've been doing hobby, I've been doing little bits, and what I can actually say I've been doing is I've been building the L Cut Creative retaining walls at the moment, which are going to be going on my little exhibition layout. So I'm doing, I'm in the process of doing that. I said to James, I sort of hit a roadblock because the baseboards for the exhibition layout have been delayed from what I thought they would be. it's definitely a lot longer. So my window of how long I have to get the layout ready for Chatham is definitely smaller. It's not impossible, but it's definitely not what I thought it was. Um, so that's where I currently sit at the moment. But I am at least I've got things to do, things to build. So I've got stock to weather that because my rule for the exhibition layout is if it has not been weathered by Emperor's Path, it can't be on the layout. So I even have some of my own stock that has not been weathered by me yet. So the stock that I do want to go on there has to be weathered. So there we are. Obviously, you've been very, very poorly, but I guess you don't need your voice to do any hobby. I guess it depends how much you're resting. What have you been up to?
Building the UCS Django Fett Slave One. I'm sorry, Disney. It is called Slave One. That's what George Lucas called it. There's no point trying to change its name just because you don't want the connotations with the word slavery. There is slavery in the Star Wars galaxy. Anakin Skywalker was a slave. Let's just put that one to bed. But yeah, that's what I've been doing. So yeah, no, model wise, I have been doing a little bit. In fact, most of it was today and last night when actually I felt like I could come out and actually do a bit of modelling. But yeah, apart from that, I didn't really have the energy for it. But I've been working on my town scene on my 009. So I've put the Pico Rail 200 competition to the side for the moment. I'm just watching what the competition's up to, what they're coming up with. Got to make sure mine's the best, because quite frankly, what Tom's doing is insane. It's going to look amazing. I think we can tell everyone because he puts it on social media anyway. But he's basically doing like a T gauge viaduct scene on the board. It's going to be amazing. Although I did think today, I was like, I wonder if the cost and product will be more than the value of the prize when you're doing something like that. But
I don't know because he's 3D printing it all himself, isn't he?
it's
So
true. Yeah.
like I guess he's designing it all. I guess the big thing is like I don't know how to design stuff in for 3D printing. So it all comes down to I guess how much work Tom has had to put into it. But it will look great because obviously it suddenly makes what is a very small display piece. Tom's going to be because obviously what he's doing is he's making it so none of it is actually functional. So there's no wheels or anything. So he's 3D printing the whole thing with the wheels on it. So they're never going to move. So as long as they fit on the track, I guess that's all good for Tom.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, it'll look cool. I'm looking forward to seeing it. But yeah, so yeah, I've just been doing the 009. I've been doing the high street. So putting some shops on the back, and I don't think I anticipate how many buildings I actually need to go along that high street because I just picked up a couple of petite properties. They're like MDF kits and like laser cut, and you just put on your own embossed stonework or whatever you need to finish the model. It's barely got down the high street, so I've got quite a bit of work to do on them. But yeah, at this moment in time, I'm currently working on the bakery, and I've been making my only tiny little 00 gauge size goods for the bakery. So I've got some bread rolls, there's a loaf of bread, and eventually there will be a crate of tea cakes all to go in the window. But yeah, I've had to make them out of Das clay, which I thought would be easy to work with, but it turns out that the when you want to work really small DAS clay, it doesn't work for you because it's kind of layered, like it's a layered texture, rather than it actually just being sort of subs, a bit like a plaster mix, I suppose, as I was expecting it to sort of react like. So it was quite difficult to work so small, but I do have a few things going in the shop windows, and I'm working on that one at the moment. And yeah, that one, there's a pub. I've just finished the hardware shop, and then I've got what will be the butchers and the fishmongers, which is a daypole kit that I've absolutely bashed the hell out of. I think it looks really good, but you'll have to wait for my video to see how it all turns out.
Yeah, you've stopped sharing stuff with me. You've now made it that I have to be there with the rest of the scrubs, and I find everything out now when it happens.
You got to see the pub last night because I asked the question, didn't I? If the doorway looked right or not.
Yeah, I guess so. Sometimes, James, I feel like we're going back into it. So obviously, another thing that's happened in terms of news bar the elephant in the room. There's not really been any new announcements, has there? We've had a quiet news week.
I think so, off the top of my head. I can't. We've been a bit higgledy-piggledy in how we've recorded things over the few weeks because obviously we've both been away for work, so it's kind of been a bit up and down. But yeah, from what I recall, I think there's only the Backman announcements for the news this week.
Yeah, I believe so. Obviously, the day this comes out is the 80th anniversary of the railway books. So if anything is being saved specifically for today, we don't know about it. So we can't necessarily go off any news there. So if there is anything that comes out in particular relating to this particular day, we will follow it up with next week. I guess that's correct,
I
right?
think it comes up in conversation later. Is it sort of because we all know there was a picture of a blue austerity in some of the promotional material from a Curious Scale that hasn't been announced, and obviously later on we do talk about 80 years of the railway series. We do try not to make it all about Thomas Tank Engine, but how it's influenced modelling. So please don't go away. We try and keep it railway modelling related. But yeah, it does come up in the subject of what we were guessing what that was. But yeah, we're guessing that as of this episode is out on the 12th of May, and the 12th of May is the 80th anniversary of the books coming out in 1945. Um, I think my money's on that blue engine in those Akira scale photos being Wilbert, but obviously we'll confirm that next week if that's the case or not. But that's what I reckon it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those weird ones where Akira haven't announced what it is, so it feels like that is an elephant in the room for it. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It does get mentioned later in this episode, so spoiler alert.
But yeah, so apart from that, then the Backman announcements, we get to news time.
Yes, let's break in the news music.
So yeah, Backman summer announcements this week. It's I, it's getting a bit odd with Backman announcements, isn't it? Because um, they obviously moved to this setup of we'll only tell you when the models are coming, and we're going to do it, every sort of quarter of the year to break things up rather than doing their yearly announcements. Everyone gets really hyped up and frothing at the mouth and then have to wait 5 years for the model to actually appear. And that kind of made sense. But I do feel they kind of lost their way with how they do the announcements because everything new was already announced. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It feels a
that
bit, it feels a bit flat. And it's like you get excited about it. And I was like, I think it's like the third time everyone's got a bit excited and watched it and went, oh, there was nothing new. And it's like, well, yeah, that's because everything got announced last week. It's just
I
so
think the direct comparison to this for last year is this time last year, NG7 was announced as a new gauge. That's it. That is pretty much so. It was obviously a very, very big announcement. And what's happened is a brand new scale and gauge has been announced with not really anything to follow it up other than Scenecraft. And I said this to you, and I said it to quite a lot of people. I felt like this was very much a Scenecraft summer announcement, and it the only part of it that made me feel like it was a summer announcement is that everybody was taking time off. That's how it felt.
yeah, maybe. I mean, it probably all falls down onto shipping slots and factory slots, etc. But summing it up, obviously they've announced the 66s previously, and the 66s were in the announcement. There was also the Isle of Wight coaches for EFE Rail. They announced them a couple of weeks ago for 009. We've got the return of the Corey Hunslets. And that one was disappointing because everyone, I think, was expecting something else 009 to come with that 009 announcement. I think there was a bit of feeling of, oh, here it comes. We're going to get some more 009 and then nothing. Although, be this week, I'm sure it is. I have to do the maths off the top of my head. Rapido, probably this Thursday or Friday, not quite, can't remember, will be announcing their own 009 models from the looks of things.
Yes, which is very exciting because I can't imagine that Rapido are going to be going and doing stuff that's already been done. So I'm very intrigued as to what they're going to.
Yeah, no, I do wonder what they're going to do. And then they do like to find real oddities. That's sort of the charm of their range, isn't it? And the narrow gauge is just full of them. So I don't know. Maybe it'll be a coffee pot. I mean, that'd be quite nice.
Oh,
But
what about if it was a mountain railway engine? That could be. We've gone off topic. We're supposed to be talking about the Bachmann announcement, but yes, the
sorry,
Rapido
Batman.
announcement. I mean, that pretty much
Yes.
sums up this announcement. But Rapido are
Right.
going to be announcing something later this week, so yeah, that's going to be exciting. So we'll cover that next week. But yeah, going back to the Bachmann summer announcements, then. So yes, the Quarry Huns that's coming back is always good. They are beautiful locos, and I think are welcome, and they're priced so fairly as well. Like I think
They
the
are, aren't they? Because, I mean, considering what people were paying for them on the second-hand market, it wouldn't be too hard for Bachmann to say, well, that's what you want to pay, that's what we'll charge.
yeah.
So, yeah. But I think otherwise, we're sort of neglecting the N-gauge here. I'm not quite sure what. I tell you what did surprise me was the Collectors Club Midland Railway locomotive, later the LMS 1P
Mm.
in green. I never knew Midland Railway's engines were originally painted green. That was quite the shock. Because I looked at it like, what the hell is this? So yeah, it was. That was quite a surprise. I think it looks quite nice. Definitely one for collectors.
I think it is that thing of, like you said, the stuff that was new. They didn't save anything new for this announcement. Is the best way to word it. We had no real big surprises.
Yeah, I don't know. Does that? I mean, obviously their marketing probably know better than what we do. But does that work or does that not work? Oh, there's the other one. It's the LMS goods van, which also got announced quite a while ago.
I
I mean, return of the Mark II Fs. That's going to be a very popular one. Even though they are creeping near to the £100 mark now, but they are very very nice coaches. And I'm sure people were paying over the odds on eBay for them. You get them in BR, blue and grey. There's the Network Rail ones. There's Anglia liveried ones as well. So it's good to see them return. And I think the other one was the return of the container flats.
Or the
That's
Freightliner
they,
ones.
yeah. So they were originally, I think, 2018. I think they were last seen 2018, 2019. So it's been a long wait for people that wanted them. And it's good to see them come back. And they're doing them in 5 packs as well. So you don't have to hunt around and try and find, because I think everyone was finding the ends and no one could find the middles. So yeah, they're now doing them in 5 packs. So you can buy them as singles or doubles or as 5 packs. And I think the 5 packs quite a reasonable price for what you get. I think it's 299.95 before discount, because obviously you can shop around and find a discount of this sort of thing. So yeah, I think that's been quite a welcome to the range. The Engage, they've got the wagons of the Tilcon and Buxton Lime Industries. So I think they're JGA wagons.
Mm.
So there's quite a few of them coming back into the Engage range. I'm sure Engage modders appreciate that. Steel coil carriers as well.
Yep.
So I
A
think
lot of
that's
vent fans as
mostly
well.
mostly return of wagons, really, isn't it? There's meat vans and other sorts in Engage. I'm trying to see, did they have any locos announced? Oh, there we go. There's some Class 47s. I had to scroll through, but yeah, we've got some Class 47s in BR Blue.
Yeah, it was
Oh,
a
gauge is a K3.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Just the whole thing just felt very flat and deflating. Like nothing felt exciting about it.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of, I get the quarterly announcements, but the quarterly announcements don't work if you announce everything, you know, 2 months in advance. It's sort of, it's It's a strange one. I don't know. Maybe they're listening, maybe they're not. I mean, they seem to listen to your rant about long-winded videos because
Yeah.
they do seem a lot shorter these days. But I don't know. It's yeah, just save everything for the day.
It it can just feel yeah, the whole thing just felt a little bit flat and it didn't feel like an exciting announcement. So I guess that's where we leave it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean to say, I think there's some returns that are going to be quite popular, but um, it was definitely very coach and wagon heavy, and like you say, scene craft heavy rather than locomotive heavy. But there we are. Maybe everyone's got enough locos. Maybe that's what it is.
I don't
Because
think anyone's saying that.
people are a lot more picky with locos. I think the prices have crept up and crept up to the point where the impulsive purchase of locos are not what they once were. So maybe that's affected production runs and what companies are deciding to produce.
Yeah, like you're probably right on that one.
Shall we go on to our main segment for the day?
Yes, let's go and talk about the Railway series.
Indeed. Oh no, another Thomas episode.
Got you.
Ooh. That's lovely. Ooh. 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 Yeah, look at that. That's dirty. That is filthy.
Sir, you can't get that out right now. Not in the middle of a dinner party.
Why not? I want to show it to all of my guests.
I'm afraid it's just not appropriate, sir.
Nonsense, Wilson. Ladies and gentlemen, look at that.
I say, has he whipped out his dirty shunter for us all to see?
You can get your models weathered by Emperor's Path using just the airbrush for a light dusting, or alternatively, oil paints and airbrush to add that extra depth. Contact Emperor's Path on Instagram at emperors_path, or alternatively, emperorspathcontact@gmail.com. Emperor's Path Weathering. If it's not dirty, let's fix that.
Only Emperor's Path makes it that dirty.
Once upon a time, there was a little engine called Edward. He lived in a shed with 5 other engines. Those were the words from the very first Railway Series book, The 3 Railway Engines, written by the Reverend W. Wardley, first published on the 12th of May, 1945. And so we thought, as today is the day, if you're listening, it's 80 years to the day, we'd celebrate those books and how they have influenced our modelling. So we can't talk for all things Railway Series without having someone who knows things all Railway Series. So welcoming back to the show, we have Tom from Buggleskelly Station. Hello, Tom. How are you?
Hello. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. It's great to have you back on. So the Railway Series is, I think, some of the best children's books ever written, personally. How did you get in there? Did you have stories written, or did you find them as an adult?
I had a big book compendium of all the stories when I was a child. I actually had some of the first ones that I got were the later books, so the ones that were published when I was like 2 or 3 years old. So the Christopher Audrey books. I think, trying to remember the name of the first one that I had, something Jock the New Engine, I think it was, which is about the 15-inch gauge engines, and that was probably about 1990-ish, I think. I'll have to double check when that was published, but yeah. So that I had those as individual books, and then I had the big compendium of all of them, and obviously grew up, being force-fed Thomas the Tank Engine on TV as well. So it was all sort of intermingled, the books and the TV show for me.
Yeah, I think I was the same. I'm not sure. I can't quite remember when those books came into my life, but the one that sticks with me, and I've still got it, is that W.H. Smith used to do a little omnibus of several stories together, and I've got the one with Oliver the Western Engine on the front, and that thing is tattered and dog-eared and well loved. It was, and that was the book that introduced me to the narrow gauge engines.
Yes, yeah.
They were not on the TV for a very long time, and that's sort of, I think, possibly where my love of narrow gauge came from. What about you, Sam? When were you exposed to the world of the Railway Series?
So mine came in the form of the TV series, first of all, but I always remember whenever I stayed at my grandma and granddad's house, they had a very, very tattered version of the 3 railway engines. And it had this like weird brick style frame around the front cover of it. But that is my first memory of coming across the books, and not only was it already tattered by the time I got my grubby little mitts on it, but also I remember I just read it every single time I was there, and that book is definitely a strong influence on me from the Railway series. So yeah, sadly, I come from the era where I was shoved in front of a TV and watched the Railway series, but the books very, very quickly came into my life as a child.
I think a lot of us were probably the same, of our similar age. I think Sam's you're the same age as me, are you, Sam? How old are you?
Yes, I was born in 1988.
Oh, so was I.
Mm.
And James was born in 1945.
The listeners won't get that reference, but yes, James was definitely of the 1945 variety.
That's right, I was. Yeah. I'm a war baby. Yes, indeed. I just celebrated my 80th birthday myself.
Well, congratulations.
that's our introduction to the world of the railway series, and obviously we're a model railway podcast, so trying to keep this relevant to what we like to usually talk about. How do you think these books have influenced your modeling? Do you think they have been there in your life? I mean, Tom, it must be influential in yours because of what you do as a business and in particular some of the items that you sell.
Yeah, I mean, the sort of things that I'm doing at the minute, because I'm the whole point behind Buggleskelly Station is little, I'd say comedy cameos, but little, you know, pop culture references and things for your model railway. So the most recent building would be Mrs. Kindly's cottage, which is one that I've just, as we're recording today, just sort of announced it. Would have been a couple of weeks ago from today, the 12th of May. Um, so yeah, Mrs. Kindly's cottage, the barber shop, and all these sort of things that are iconic enough from the book illustrations they're based on, for people to sort of add on to their little model railway. But my own personal layouts, I've got a Croven's Castle, which is based on the Skarloey Railway. That's one that I've basically been using the law books, which accompanied the railway series. So yeah, it's a bit like in Lord of the Rings, where you get a whole back story, compendiums of, I keep using the word compendium, but I don't know if that's the right word, but the sort of the world.
Perfectly prominent word. That's fine.
Yes, it's a cromulent word. Well, a cromulent word. So Audrey basically created a whole world around these stories, which it never started like that. But as people started asking him questions about things, he had to kind of be consistent. So he'd create the map and the history behind the different towns and the reasons behind, the town names and village names and all the names of mountains and rivers and things. And so that's sort of what I've based my Croven's Castle layout on. It is supposed to be a castle near Croven's Gate Works, and that's obviously influenced by his writing in the books and the accompanying material around the books as well.
I've seen, obviously, you have videos of that up on your YouTube as well, don't you? And it's slowly progressing along.
Very slowly, yeah.
But
glacial progression.
But yeah, you can definitely.
A bit like Sam's Railway.
I like that though. I like that sort of, I'd say, Tolkienism of the backstories.
That was the one. Tolkien was the one. Who did I say? Did I say Lord of the Rings? Yeah, Tolkien.
Did,
sorry,
yeah.
Good.
But yeah, that whole world building backstory is, I really like that, and I think that's what has influenced my current build of my 009. Because as I say, I think the books are what introduced me to narrow gauge railways. They're what made me aware that there was this smaller railway out there. I don't think there was, I never visited one, even though we lived down the road from the Leighton Buzzard Railway, but we never been. In fact, my dad left it so late. He actually only went to the Leighton Buzzard Railway for the first time about 2 weeks ago. Although he's lived in Bedfordshire all his life. So yeah, I didn't know about narrow gauge, but I love narrow gauge, and I'm certain it's from these books that my love of narrow gauge came along. And I'm the same. I really love the mid Snowdor railway stories and the work we built around them, and that definitely influenced what I'm doing. I mean, it's why I've called mine the Mid Snowdon Railway, as a sort of nod to the Mid Snowdor. And
well, that one's interesting because if you look down sort of the history, say the history, it's not real history, but the history that Audrey wrote, you can see that it was originally based on there was the line there, the narrow gauge line, and then later on in the books that was ripped up and replaced with the is it 15-inch gauge, but the smaller, and it's laid on the same tracks. And you look at the illustrations of the later books, and they're the same stations, but with a smaller track laid on it. And I really like that sort of detail that, kids aren't going to notice that really. That's why you can kind of tell that he said himself, he wrote for the adults as much as he did for the children. I can't remember the exact quote, but he was basically saying that he's writing for the adults who have to suffer these stories over and over again. They're reading them over and over again, so he has to keep it interesting for the adults. So it's something to, little jokes and things for us to pick up on that the kids would just go over their heads. And the history and stuff is not for the little kids. It's for the people who are still interested in the big kids. It's for us.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a lost art in children's storytelling these days. Um,
Yeah.
Everything's just they don't even think that the adults have to suffer this. But I think you're right. The in particular that like you said, the mid-nodal railway and the 15-inch gauge railway that replaced it. He thought the world building there. He really did think about it because I think it may have been the Unlucky Tug video that he sort of first pointed out, where he goes, well, like you say, the same stations are here, and there's hints of what that railway once was, and obviously in his writer's mind, he already knows what it was and what was there,
Yeah.
and it takes us a few years and a few books to finally learn what was originally there, and that sort of depth and world building for what is classed as a children's story just shows how passionate he was for his imagined railway, and obviously he loved it so much he built it as a model railway.
Yeah, that's quite an important thing to state is that he did have a model railway. He had several that he built, and a lot of the stories as it went on were based on his own model railway. So it's kind of the opposite way round. We're talking about railways, or modelling inspired by the books, but a lot of the things that were on his model railway became things in the books later. So I think it was the fact that Duck, the model that he had of Duck, waddled as it moved, and so that was the reason that he called the character Duck. And in the books, it moved, based on how the model railway one had done. So yeah, there's certain things like that kind of the opposite way round is because he would have a model railway and play with it and base some stories on those kind of characters that he's created.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, isn't it like that's how Henry become replaced because his actual model of Henry was a terrible runner,
Yeah.
replaced by a Black Five model, and I think that's how Boko become introduced. He just happened to pick up. I think Hatton's had a surplus supply of the double O Class 28s, and he got one of them, and that's how Boko joined the family.
I wish they'd have a surplus. Oh, they don't exist anymore, do they? I'd love a Boko. That's one of the getting back to model railways. That's one of the locos that I would like. I'm not really into big diesels, as you know,
Mm.
but that's something that I'd love is just to have that because Boko's just a great character. I think it's just one of those would work really well on a model railway, and the fact that he has a face on each end, I've always liked in the books. In the TV show, they didn't do that with a lot of them. The ones where they'd have a face on each end, Toby in most of the illustrations as well. Some of them he's shown with his face on the other end, which you don't realise unless you kind of study the illustrations.
I
Whereas in the
genuinely
TV
didn't
show,
know
they
that.
never did that. Yeah, there's only shown in a couple of shots, but you can see from the bell and the sort of the roof furniture that it's the opposite way around in a couple of illustrations. And I'm trying to think which other ones, but yeah, most of the diesels where they would naturally travel in the opposite direction, like Boko, there is a face on both ends, which is a bit odd, really. I suppose that's probably why they didn't do it on the TV show.
What about you, Sam? Do you think the Railway series books have brought any influence into your own modelling? I mean, obviously, there was not a lot of stabilizer railway in the Railway series, but do you think there's anything that influenced you? Is that how you got into it? Is that where your love of Great Western engines comes from?
So it definitely influenced my previous iterations of doing this hobby. I was very much a case of I wanted an Oliver and I wanted a Duck. They were the two models that I wanted to have on a railway, and I always loved seeing the pannier tanks running whenever you did go to a sort of a model railway show or anything like that. And I think I never really remember seeing a 14XX when I was younger, but I always remember if you walked past a model railway shop, there was always a pannier tank of some ilk sat in the window. And when I was younger, and even going back to sort of 2012, 2013, I very much wanted to have sort of a branch line terminus station that I could run these Great Western engines into and run them back out again. I was always more interested in the tank engine side of it than I was these sort of big giant engines, which when you look at what I model now, it's bizarre. Having these little branch lines and all these stories about sort of little engines, and obviously you had the bigger engines there, but they outnumbered the big engines in the Railway series books. And I think that's always been something that's been in the back of my mind, and it's why I get so excited when these new versions of the models come out and you see them and they look great. And likewise with the narrow gauge stuff, that the reason I've never properly modeled narrow gauge before was because it wasn't something that was as readily available to us until recently. But I loved reading about the narrow gauge engines because I remember going on holidays and going to, I'm going to say, I'm pretty sure it was the Talaklim when I was younger, and we got to go on those trips, and it was always the narrow gauge trains that we went on rather than the sort of the big heritage steam railways that were around at the time. So for me, having something that I could relate to from those books was fantastic.
I like what you picked up on. Then I think that moves us on to the next thing I thought we could discuss was how do we think the railway series has influenced other people's modelling? And like you say, that nowadays, I think we've touched on this before, but a lot of manufacturers tend to make the real life prototypes of a lot of the railway series engines. So obviously we've got the Cali twins, we have the Class 812s. Hattons did at one point work with Helion to bring us the Class 28. Rapido are working on the Bugnell twins, the Port of Par pair. They've also done the J70 tram. Even at Curascale have the one and only Sodor green pannier tank that goes out on display.
The factory error.
That's the one, the accidental on purpose one.
And I don't know what date are we today? The 12th of May, aren't we? Of course.
Yeah.
I have an inkling there might be some sort of announcement around now as well about something else, but I don't know for definite, so I'm not going to say. But there could well have been something announced today or around this time.
If I recall, when they put out an austerity publication photo, there's one extra engine in that photo that looks very particular.
Familiar, yeah.
But I was taking a guess at what I thought it could be.
I find it interesting because you've both referenced this before about the austerity engine. So for me, who is someone who has never read the Chris Awdry books, can you sort of give us a little bit more on that for those who, like me, haven't read those newer books that are like hen's teeth to get hold of?
Yeah, so Wilbert the Forest Engine is basically, I think it was, I'm going to say mid-90s it was published. And it's about the real loco that was on the Dean Forest Railway, Wilbert. And Wilbert was named after Awdry, Wilbert Awdry. So yeah, it was basically Christopher Awdry wrote this story to include him in the books, more or less. So the stories aren't great, as most of Christopher Awdry's stories aren't the best. They were sort of, by that stage, a lot of them were kind of being written to be made into TV episodes, so they were done a bit quicker than the original Reverend Awdry stories.
Yeah, you can tell there's influence in there, and that writing, isn't there? There's definitely. But
saying that, none of the Wilbert books, I don't think any of those ever made it into episodes because Wilbert never appeared on the show. So it is an interesting model. I think the fact that it's a real loco is a nice thing. This is all speculation, of course. We don't know for definite, but if this is being brought out as a model this year, which I am 90% sure it is. This is a nice year to do it because obviously the 80th anniversary. It's a real loco. It's currently in a bit of a state of, I think it's on a siding awaiting restoration at the minute. But yeah, it makes sense for that to come out as a model because people will include it in their Sodor themed layouts, but it would also work on real world layouts as well. The austerity.
Yeah, certainly because it's an actual engine, and
yeah,
and I think that definitely does show how much of influence the railway series books have had on model railways. We say we've listed a collection of locomotives there. I always do wonder if we ever get a real to life E2, or if the companies are a bit too nervous about approaching.
Yeah, I think the issue is obviously Mattel have the license. Mattel own the license for the characters, and Bachmann are licensed to release the loco models. I did read recently about, I can't remember where I read it or the source of this, but I think there's always been a bit of speculation over whether Bachmann can only release TV series models. But there was something I'm saying about a month ago. I saw a post from somebody at Bachmann saying that's not the case, and they could, if they wanted to, they could release original characters from the books under the same license. So that's interesting. We could see something announced based on the Railway series characters. But regarding the E2, I don't think it would come out as a Thomas character. But whether another manufacturer brought it out, just happened to be in a blue fictional livery, that would be interesting.
Well, yeah, I mean, because Hornby have already sort of done that, haven't they? In the fact that they bought out, once they'd lost the Thomas license, they kept the tooling going, and we got an E2 and a South Eastern and Chatham Railway livery for some reason.
Yeah, and the Beatles livery.
That's it. And I think the number was very close to the Ertl model, which also used the Thomas molding from the toy range to try and model. I assume Primrose, because that was one
Yes,
of the
yeah.
Stepney book, wasn't it? But again, yeah, like the P class. There's another example of engines that have appeared in books that then come out, and in fact, Hatton's made it. I always find it very unusual that Hatton's picked the P class when they're so very, very far away from the Southern, and I always did wonder if that one was of certain influence.
Possibly. I think. I mean, there's so many locos that appear in the books. Things like obviously rockets in there as well. There's all these things that do cross over because there's a lot of real world influence in the books. I think the fact that Hornby brought out their original range of models around 1984, I think it was them, to coincide with the TV series, that's got to be the biggest influence on modelers today, because I'd say probably 75% of the modelers I know that are our age, or I say under 40, they're in it because of Thomas, the books or the TV series. I'd say that is, I mean, some people listen to this podcast might say, oh, I can't stand Thomas, but you just look at the influence of people, our age and younger, say 75% of people, they might not be into railways at all if it weren't for Thomas.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I don't have much left from my childhood collection of model trains, but I do still have my original Annie and Clarabelle,
Yeah.
which I've now
And I
passed.
see no end of people posted things on, I was going to say serious modelers, but say maybe the older generation. I don't want to generalize people, but at model shows, they'll say, "Oh, I bought Thomas. Picked up this Thomas set, Thomas, Annie, and Clarabelle, just to run for the kids." I think it's not for the kids, is it? It's because you want Thomas on your layout.
It's always an excuse.
Yeah, which is great, because that's the thing when you do go to model shows. Because I go to about 2 shows a month, so I see a lot of layouts, and there is always a Thomas layout there. And it's always the most popular layout, and it's not just for the kids. It's I'm trying to think which show it was last year. I think it was Milton Keynes, and every layout seemed to have a Thomas on it, just as a little cameo that they bring out for the kids. Well, for the kids, and they're always the most popular moment when Thomas came out. There's just something about that little engine that people love, even big kids.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was at that show, and you're right. I think even in my video I made for it, I recall picking up Thomas about 3 or 4 times on the camera.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, here he is again. But yeah, I think the Thomas train set was probably the first train set I got, and that's the start of the path into model railways for me. I think Sam, wasn't your first train set that Royal Mail one, or did you start with Thomas as well?
Yeah, my first train set was the Royal Mail one, so I can't claim that my first was a steam loco. But then I look back at it and I think it's weird because I wasn't into diesels or trains like that when I was younger. It's only now that I am. The other trains I had after that were all Thomas locos, and one of them being a Percy loco, because I've always loved the shape and how Percy is possibly this might be he's the only fictional engine that's a sort of a main character in the railway series. Is that right?
Yeah. The basis is, I think it is one of those that no one's 100% sure on what the basis of him is, this little 040. But he's kind of a mixture of different things. It looks a bit like a pug, and I can't remember the name. There's one that is sort of very similar to, but yeah, he's not. There's not a basis for him. Sorry, not a pug. Packet, yes. Thank you.
Yeah, Peckett with a bunker, isn't he?
Yeah.
That sort of But yeah, it's definitely an unusual one.
But and the illustration of him as well is different in every single book. It changes so much, and the TV show is obviously very different. But in the Railway series, he's sort of some of the earlier books. He looks like a caterpillar with red stripes, and he kind of comes different shape. He does end up looking more like a Peckett. Yeah, so it's an interesting one, Percy, and the fact that he is, like you say, a main character.
But I agree with you. Yeah, but like at the model shows that when they run Thomas out, and it always is the crowd pleaser, and there are those that do go as far as to build dedicated Thomas layouts, and I think some of the best modeling I've seen is those that actually try and replicate the Reverend Awardry's work in their own modeling. Tom
Yeah,
Foster comes to mind.
Tom Foster. I knew you were going to say that.
I mean, he's done.
That's amazing. Yeah,
I can't. Is it Scarlefell, his narrow gauge one that he's
yeah.
been working on? I mean, that is.
Wardfell Slate Quarry.
I mean, that is just incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, it's if you've not seen it, well, he's on Facebook, Tom Foster Weathering, but the photos that he takes of the thing is sort of misty pictures, and they look like real photos. That he's got Model U figures on there. He's got really realistic trees, and the scenery's amazing. But the locos are basically the Scarloey engines in real life, so they haven't got the faces.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's just amazing. Yeah.
You would, I mean, if you didn't know of this railway existing, you'd think it was based on a real life prototype. It looks that good. I'm sure it's Tom that's done other modelling, like he's tried to the Farquhar branch line before and stuff like that. He tends to do a lot of very serious modelling, and there are other modelers out there that do the same. I think there's Sundrian Histories, who tends to put a bit of spin on his modelling. So again, he's taken the Reverend Awardry's law and he's just sort of adapted it a little bit. And again, to try and give the railway a real life purpose.
There's one, I'm trying to think the name of it's a YouTube channel. I think it's the NWR Stories. I think that's one. That might be what it's called. I might be wrong. NWR Stories, though, was basically he'd do his own stories using the models, the like Hornby models, but all the faces are from the books, so they're just paper cut out faces. So the expressions he'd stick on the locos, and it's really effective. But yeah, that's one that I always enjoyed.
Yeah, I really like it when people sort of take that world and try to create it. And as I say, you can definitely see the influence there. I mean, I don't know if you follow him on Instagram. There's a chap in Australia, and apologies, I can't remember his name, but he's got a replication of the Reverend Awardry's Farquhar.
Yeah, I follow him on TikTok. I can't remember his name though. But yes, yeah, I do know who you mean. And it does look like his original model. Yeah.
And I think that's the great thing about it, isn't it? Is this, they weren't just the books. It was building that model railway, and he obviously built it to take to shows to show children what the world would look like. And I know we do it a lot in narrow gauge, but it does surprise me that there isn't a lot more fictional worlds people create with their own modeling. I don't know why it is when it comes to standard gauge engines, why we shy away from creating our own fictional companies or fictional places that these railways could run, because I think there's so much more flexibility and freedom in what you can do. And,
I think a lot of it comes down to the locos themselves, because I mean the narrow gauge locos look like, I don't know the best way to say it, but they sort of look a bit like what a child would imagine a steam engine looks like. It's like a cartoon. It's almost Ivor the Engine type thing. So you can imagine it's a fictional little railway that doesn't need to exist in the real world, I suppose. Is the bit. Colonel Stevens, that's the name that's come to my head. Basically, they were, I don't know if you know about Colonel Stevens Railways.
Yes. Sam, are you aware of Colonel Stevens?
No, I'm not actually. It's one that's sort of slipped past me. But just to sort of echo off what Tom said, that I agree, the narrow gauge engines do almost look like caricatures of engines.
Yeah,
of
that's the word.
Yeah, there we go. I was waiting for the break for me to be able to just sort of quickly just pop it in.
it was, sorry, just to explain what Colonel Stevens. Well, this is how I understand it. So basically, they were light railways, so very small railways with character, basically. They were like, yeah, they look a bit like Titfield Thunderbolt style, where it's a little line that's kind of self-contained, and it's not things on that railway look unique, or it looks like something you might have a shed that's. I could keep going back to Ivor the Engine, but it's something that I love the idea of modelling a branch line with, like the way I do all my buildings, where it's a bit ramshackle and you got maybe a wooden station or something, or a half brick water tower with a weird roof to it or something. It's something you'd never see in real life, and that's sort of why I have that idea of that sort of railway. That reminds me of narrow gauge, and I can't remember the original question, but but yeah, I think that's why you see kind of things like that are unique.
Yeah,
Fictional railways based on that sort of thing because they existed in real life. Anyway, sorry, Sam, to interrupt you.
that's good. But the most I mean, famous one people might know of is the East and the Kent and East Sussex Railway. That was Colonel Stevens Railway. The Festiniog fell under his guidance as well at one point. So he's had a wide scope. I think a few of the narrow gauge railways off the top of my head may have had a bit of Colonel Stevens' influence. But yeah, like you say, it's that ramshackle
They
buying
were
old.
run on a budget, weren't they?
Yeah,
Basically,
that's it. You know, you guaranteed if it's standard gauge to find a terrier on there, I'm sure, because the London Brighton were selling them off, and he'd pick them up, and obviously they're well suited for those sort of light railways. And
yeah,
it's definitely, and they definitely those railways do feel very Awardry-esque in their
yes,
piecing together bits of the world to make up a new railway. And it's as I say, it's curious that we don't see more of those fictional worlds as like what the Reverend Awardry did, but maybe not everyone's planning to write their own books for them. So maybe that's it. Obviously, we have lots of model projects going on, and Tom, you're kind of there already. But I mean, if you were to build an area from the books as a model railway, or recreate one of the images of the lovely illustrations that are in the books, what would you think you might go for?
I had to have a think about this because obviously I'm building Craven's Castle, which is fictional. Fictional, they're all
Yeah.
fictional, but it's not based on a specific book. But I really like the idea of doing something that I've never seen done before. So feel free to steal this idea because I'll never get around to doing it. But I'd really like to build Coldie Fell. It's if you don't know it, it's a bit different to all the other books because it's the only one that's based on the mountain railway, which was basically Snowdon Railway. So it's the book Mountain Engines. It came out in 1964, and it's the engines that travel up to the top of the mountain, and they have a face on each end. Again, I don't know if there's an obsession there, but I'd love to build maybe a layout in Z gauge or something, or even T gauge, so tiny layout, just to have the mountainscapes because there's some beautiful illustrations in that book, just showing the Welsh mountains in the distance and this tiny little train travelling up in the storm. So that's something
Yeah,
I'd like to do, to build Coldie Fell Mountain Railway. That'd be
yeah.
really cool.
We've talked
I
about
definitely
the Coldie Fell Mountains as well, because I said to James when we talked about the actual TV series, I said how for me it was always an interesting book because it was never represented. I think it's the one book that has nothing referenced in the TV series. Is that right? Or are there other books that I might be missing?
Yeah, I think there might be a couple of stories that aren't, but yeah, definitely that whole book doesn't come into it at all.
Hmm.
And that does it is interesting. Yeah, definitely.
I can see why you pick it because they are absolutely beautiful illustrations in those books, in particular Mountain Engines. Like you say, that the one of the engine going up the mountain in the storm, it's fantastic. It's very evocative, and that's the kind of thing you'd want to hang on your living room wall. It's that sort of style of art, I think.
Yeah, it's got the kind of, I don't know how you'd model the wind and the rain, but you could do it in the sort of the colours. You could almost like a watercolor painting to do a massive backdrop. I'm just thinking of practicalities of actually modeling it. Because if I do it, this is if it's going to happen, but I don't think it will happen. But if I were to model it in, say, Z gauge, because you could get working track in that scale, you could probably do a mountain in 6 foot, 6 foot by 4 foot or something.
Hmm.
And that would be a fairly sizable mountain in Z gauge, I'd say. It's an idea. It'd be interesting to see. I've never seen it done. Somebody probably has done it, but I know there are Ertl models. I don't know what scale they come out at. I think they're probably something like they're smaller than 00HO. The
They
Ertl models might be. Are they smaller than 176?
The later models were all drawn to TT scale.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Seriously, yeah.
Oh,
I'm
Sam
not
can do
sure.
it then.
But ironically, whilst the actual Ertl models were about TT scale, that's meant to be a narrow gauge one, isn't it? So
Yes, that's
effectively,
true.
that should.
Yeah.
So whatever the TT version of narrow gauge is, that's ideally what you probably want to do them in.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't think their proportions are too far off. 009. I have seen someone motorize the mountain engine models. I think it was a Japanese modeler, but he had him going around a circular track. No
Yeah.
mountain to climb,
I think
but
the issue would be the traction, because obviously in real life there's a like a is it a track and pin? Is that what it's
track and
called?
pinion, isn't it?
Pin, yeah. So you'd have to model that as well.
Definitely.
It's doable.
Yeah.
Maybe just do it as a static diorama. That'd be cool. If I was to do it as a static diorama, I'd do it in T gauge. Then I could do it on a couple of
Yeah.
feet. That'd be really
That'd be
cool.
amazing, wouldn't it? That'd be really cool.
I'll be bringing that to the shows next year then.
That's a nice 6 foot. Go right at the front of the
Well,
stall.
there's my Pico entry. There's the Rail 200 entry. Oh,
Uh,
that's a good
I-
idea, actually.
You've only got 2 foot 6 inches. No, not even that. 2 foot 5 inches to play with. 1 foot
Oh,
one.
yeah.
Yeah, these boards are very small.
Yeah, and the height's the annoying thing with that.
Oh yes,
There's a restriction of 14 centimeters or something. Because
yeah,
I've had ideas of what I'd like to do, but everything involves going up higher.
yes.
So,
I've wondered that problem because I wanted some nice big trees of mine, and that so I was like, they're going to be too tall.
yeah.
Well, we'll just have to see on there. But do you know what? I was looking forward. I think we discussed this in last week's episode. But I was saying I think it'd be quite fun that this Rail 200 thing, providing who gets selected to come to the model show to display their models. But knowing who's entered so far, I thought, well, it would just be quite fun just for the meetup. For some of the names that I know that are entering already, like yourself. I know George Williamson's entering. I think Peachy said he's going to be entering as
Well,
well.
there's no point doing it then if George Williamson's doing
That's
it.
what I replied to him. He put it, yeah, he put it on Instagram. I went, well, I'm out then. So, what's the point? I've got better.
I do wonder what show they're going to display them at, because we'll be booked into most of the big ones this year. If it's the one at the NEC, we'll be there anyway in November.
Yeah,
I mean, it could be Getz, which will be at just as drunken participants by the sound of it.
yeah, that could be messy. We've wandered off topic there quite a bit, haven't we?
Yes, a little bit.
Sam, have you got? Is there anything in the books that you ever looked at and thought, if I did do a railway series theme layout, that's what I'd do, or is there an image you'd like to recreate as a diorama or anything like that?
So there was my initial response was going to be Tidmouth Sheds, because I wanted a turntable, and then when I looked into the books, I was like, actually, Tidmouth Shed wasn't a turntable shed; it was just a sort of general run of the mill line shed to it. I was like, oh, okay, so it's not that one. And then when flicking through the books, there's a particular image that really caught my eye. I mean, Brendan Docks would be a really good one, but it's at the beginning of Donald's Duck, the story. There's this sort of scenic look as he's coming down the tracks of his branch line as it runs along the coast.
Yes.
And I think the TV series did a really good job of creating that particular area when they modelled it. But it's a really picturesque. The picture of it in the books is beautiful, and I think if I was going to, I'd create that sort of really nice scenic seaside branch line sort of picture that they've got in there, and I think it would be really, really good to do.
Yeah, I know exactly what picture you're referring to, and I'm desperately scrambling around trying to find the answer. I know that that image is off the Cambrian coast. It,
Yes, because Tim Dunn put a photo of that up a couple of years ago after the Audrey extravaganza, and he put the original image. Sorry, Tim Dunn, railway historian, and he had a comparison of the real coaster against that illustration.
yeah, I bought a book on I think the Cambrian coast itself, and that's where I saw the illustration. I was like, I know that picture, and it took me a minute or two, and I realised why I knew it, and it was because it was used for the illustration of yeah, Donald Duck, the first picture there, and then I remember posting it on Instagram and then putting where it was. There it is. So it's
Very yellow.
yes, now a butcher Welsh language again. The Dyfi estuary or Dyfi
Oh,
estuary.
that's perfect, mate. Yeah.
So that's that's what it is. But yeah, no, I can see why you'd pick that. It's um, I myself was if I did something, I probably would do something along Duck's branch line around Aylesbury West, or even venture into sort of the Mid Sodal Railway, which has the Reverend Wardley once did model, which is it in display? It is in display, isn't it, at the museum in Toyne on the Tallaglyn, his narrow gauge one. Is that there? I can't remember now. I know
Um,
Park was in the window, isn't it? It's sort of a replication of his study, and you see all the books on the walls and there's a layout there. I can't remember if the narrow gauge in the background. I know it comes
I,
out every now and again for like the
I can't
extravagant.
remember. I think it is. Yeah. I'm not 100% sure. I'll find out in.
But yeah, it's I mean that's a wonderful little layout. It's one of those sort of what they called rabbit warren style layout, which sort of the train would disappear through a tunnel and reappear somewhere, and he's squeezed the route into there, and as a model of the mountain pass. But yeah, when I see the illustrations in the book, I think a lot of them are Festiniog um, examples that have been turned into the illustrations. But I always look at it and there's something quite evocative about that railway, and I always think, yeah, again, it's that narrow gauge theme that sort of
Yeah.
attract to want to model it. I think, yeah, if I did do that, I probably would probably go more modeling the narrow gauge than the standard. But if I went standard, I'd definitely go for Aylesbury West. Just it's got a bit of great Western influence in it, hasn't it? Right. I thought it'd be a bit fun then to just do a little bit of a quick fire round. So yeah, I know. Hopefully these questions won't be too taxing, and everyone's ready. Sam, you ready for this?
I am ready.
Tom, we'll start with you. And first question: what's your favourite book?
I have too many answers for this for this question. I know it's quick fire. Genuinely, I can't decide. Tramway engines, enterprising engines, or very old engines. So very different. They're all about different railways, obviously. All three of them. I just love it. It comes down to the illustrations more than anything for me, and obviously the stories in some of them. But yeah, I'm going to say tramway engines, enterprising engines, or very old engines as my answer. And also, I like Thomas and the Great Railway Show, which is a Christopher Audrey book, just because it's one that I got at the National Railway Museum, and Christopher Audrey signed it as well.
Oh,
I met him
amazing!
there, which is cool. So that's a special one for me. And I do like the stories in that, and seeing pictures of Thomas on the back of a lorry and stuff, which is just always stuck with me. Thomas getting a parking ticket.
Yes.
There are some nice stories. They're the sort of the ones I think would have been nice to be shown on TV. That would have worked so much better if they'd done some of the later sort of TV stories where Thomas does a big show with all these engines and stuff, and they have done it in CGI. But if they'd done it where he went to the National Railway Museum and just did that book as a story, that would have been really nice, I think. So yeah, I like that one. But from the original Audrey books, I can't decide between tramway, enterprising, and very old engines. They've all got engines in the title,
Indeed. There we go.
as most of the books have, by the look of it.
Always the word engine in it
Yeah.
somewhere. That's cool. No, no, no. Well, I'll accept that. Sam, have you got a favourite one?
Uh, Once again, like Tom, very, very tough decision for me. And it definitely changed quite a few times whilst having a quick look through my little anthology. It's either going to be very old engines, simply because some of the pictures, the
Yeah.
illustrations that are in there are fantastic. It's the sail ship at the very beginning that sort of comes in. That's not your traditional thing. I think that's a very picturesque picture where you've got these really, really old school Edwardian style ships rather than the battleships and the sort of the tanker ships that we're sort of used to. I think some of the art styles in them, but to be honest, most of the narrow gauge books are solid. And I said to James before we started recording, I couldn't get over how timeline wise, how the narrow gauge engines were introduced before Percy. Which
Yeah.
when you compare it to the TV series, that's bonkers. However, the book that I will happily read over and over again is Oliver the Great Western Engine, and I think it's because it's a very Great Western biased book, and it's not just Oliver stories in there. There's obviously Donald's Duck and stuff like that, but it has that really iconic story of Oliver going into the turntable, which is another thing I considered that if I was going to model, I'd have that scene as well. So yeah, I think Oliver the Great Western Engine definitely pips it to the number one spot, but there are some honourable mentions in the fact that any of the narrow gauge books, they have beautiful illustrations in them.
Yeah, for myself, it would. As a child, it always jumped between the Little Old Engine and Oliver the Western Engine. But as a parent and reading the stories to the boy, I think Duke the Lost Engine is my favourite book, or possibly the Stepney book. Quite like Stepney the Blue Pearl Engine as well. Two, yeah. They're tough. It's tough to choose, isn't it?
I do like Duke the Lost Engine because you get a lot of the lore in there. The sort of the fact that Audrey and Teddy Boston appear in the in the illustrations,
Yeah.
and there's paintings of the Sodor map and stuff on the wall and things. There's all these little sort of say in jokes or references
Yeah.
that you wouldn't know if you were a child reading them, but you do get as an adult. I do like that.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of Easter eggs, isn't there?
Yes, that's the word. I've got a lot of Easter eggs here as well.
How many?
6 Easter eggs.
60.
Which one's your favorite? Which one's your favorite Easter egg sat there right now?
I don't know. I don't know at the minute. I haven't tried them yet. So I will just say we are recording this, just after Easter. For people wondering, I don't still have Easter eggs. I went to Asda and bought half price Easter eggs. I don't know if that's worse.
I was trying to work out. I was like, that doesn't feel any better, Tom.
You were saving them. That's weird to say. I've been saving
Yeah,
them.
sorry. Yeah, they're for next year.
Cool. Right. That's favorite book. What about favorite illustrator?
For me, Gunver and Peter Edwards, I'd say, who illustrated the last of the Wilbur Awdry books. They're sort of impressionistic, more than realistic, but it's such a beautiful art style. I think it's actually Peter Edwards who illustrated the books more. I don't know if Gunver was his wife. I think she basically got credit with it because she was the originally asked to illustrate the books, and they shared credit for the series. I do like their style, but also John T. Kenny. I really like the faces that he did. He did sort of, I want to say he did branch line engines, but I can't remember if that's true or not. I might be lying. Yeah, branch line engines. So he was before Peter Edwards, and he was from Leicester, which is where I was born. So, and also I think most of the illustrators were. The publishers were based in Leicester, which happens to be where I was born. That's the only reason I'm mentioning it. So yeah, I I I, I have an affinity with those illustrators.
For me, there's going to be a running theme on this, and I'm pretty sure I know James's answer as well. Gunver and Peter Edwards, which when I initially read it, I've been calling it Governor for quite some time, so a bit of dyslexia coming in there. But yeah,
Swedish name. I think I think they were Swedish.
Oh,
I need
okay.
to have a look actually.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think they were.
But I was surprised with how many of the books that I really like the art style of I was going back and I was like, oh, Gunvor and Peter Edwards. Oh, Gunvor and Peter Edwards. And ironically, the two books that I named in the previous, the Very Old Engines and the Oliver the Great Western Engine, are done by those two. So yeah, I'm happy because it falls in line with what I was already previously saying.
It's a very similar sort of style to Terence Cuneo, who did the famous Railway Artists, and he did a lot of the posters. So those famous paintings of engines on shed, or the famous anything you saw on a railway poster, like for the middle of the century, was hit that sort of style, and they really remind me of that
Yeah,
sort of impressionistic painting style. So I really like that.
yeah. No, I can see that. Right, you mentioned it. Yeah, they definitely. It's just lacking the little tiny mouse hidden somewhere in the scene, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Go on then,
Cool. Yeah,
James. What about you?
yeah. No, mine's the same. Gumper and Peter. It's just I quite like. It is Clive Sponge, isn't it, for the Christopher Wardry books?
Clive Spong, yeah. I was going to say his stuff from sort of Jock the New Engine onwards, I do really like actually as
Yeah,
well.
it
Not as
evolved.
much as theirs, yeah, but the first couple of books that he did were dreadful. Like you've got Thomas with a elongated face and all these weird things, and God knows what's happening with Percy in those books. But
Mm.
yeah, the early Clive Spong stuff is not very good at all, really. But he definitely got a lot better after a few books.
Yeah, few practice tries, and he got there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a unanimous then between us all. Gunvor and Peter Edwards for our favourite illustrator. What's your favourite story?
I had to think about this one as well because there's too many. I really like, and it's probably again down to the illustrations more than anything, Crosspatch, which is the first story in Very Old Engines, and it's the one about for Skarloey's 100th birthday, and he's basically explaining the history of the Skarloey Railway. I just like that. There's illustrations of the narrow gauge trucks at Craven's Gate, which is a drawing of Towin. So there's lots of illustrations of the Taleclin in there,
Yeah,
but the Audrey version of it. So yeah, probably Crosspatch. Again, it's not actually that much of a story because it's the first of four, so the four together work as the story. But that's yeah, that's probably what I. If you ask me today, that's what I'd say. But if you ask me tomorrow, I might say something completely different. Because there are the classics. There's the ones like you know, the very first book. You've got all the ones with Edward, because I love Edward. He's probably my favourite character. And he has some great stories. So I don't know. There's far too many to choose from.
that's fair. That's fair enough. What about you, Sam?
Once again, I was surprised by this, and I think a lot of the answers that I initially thought I was going to give had so much bias from the TV series on it that
Yeah.
it skewed my skewed my opinion. I was adamant I was going to be saying Flying Kipper. I actually think it's the sad story of Henry because I think it's such an iconic story that really, for me, it's always the first story from that very first book that really got me engaged. And do you know what? I would have really enjoyed having parts in the TV series where Henry remained painted blue because obviously for quite some time he's painted blue in the books, and I thought it was quite an interesting touch, which for someone whose favorite color is green, I thought was a little bit odd. But I just feel like it is the not TV episode. It's that story that just really, when I was reading it, I'd go, yeah, this is a series of books that I want to read, and I think it was a great starting episode, and I think it's one of the more memorable stories of all time, really. Once an engine attached to a train was afraid of a few drops of rain, I think sticks in far too many people's heads.
No, I think
And the nice thing as well is there's the going back to the illustrations of that. You've got two versions because it was originally William Middleton illustrated that first book, and it's interesting to see how those illustrations compare to who did. I can't remember.
Reginald
who did
Dalby,
it.
wasn't it? No, I like that. Yeah, I quite like the blue and yellow striped livery that they came in the original illustrations.
Yeah,
Never got carried through. I always thought that looked a lot smarter, but that's just my own opinion, I suppose. Yeah, I think my favourite story. I quite like Steamroller. I always enjoy that story between Sir Handel and George having a fight and
yes,
getting to the
and
point where
that's the John T. Kenny with the illustration of George. I do like that. They used to illustrate Ladybird books, and you can kind of tell. Tootles the Taxi. So it was another book that he illustrated, and it's got that same sort of art style with the faces. And in that steamroller story, there's a car that's going past Sir Handel with a little face on it, and I always remember that because it's the same style of a face as Tootles the Taxi.
Yeah, yeah. I've just googled that. Yeah, you can see that.
Yeah,
I think my gran may have had that book in her house. It looks familiar. That's probably why the artwork seemed similar. But yeah, that's cool. I think next question is favorite railway series based layout. So,
well, we've already mentioned it. For me, it's Tom Foster's Wardfell Slate
yeah,
Quarry. That's just
I
again
think
just the it looks like a real railway.
that's the same for me. I think. Sam, are you gonna anything different?
So I've not actually seen Tom Foster's Railway, so I feel like I'd be cheating a little bit on it. I did, however, get to see the Farquhar branch line at at Alexandra Palace earlier this year, and for me that I was genuinely surprised with how not I guess how much emotion seeing that layout in the flesh actually brought to me. It was
Yeah,
and what the guys running it do to keep it in that sort of Audrey-esque style as well, where they read out all the information, they tell the stories, and it for me it made me suddenly really appreciate the whole branch line side of railway modelling, and it gives me that sort of, obviously I've got an Akira scale pannier turning up soon, and I was like, maybe I do a small little branch line layout. Obviously not going to happen, but it certainly gave me lots of inspiration seeing it. But
yeah,
I feel like a lot of narrow gauge railways in general give me that railway series vibe, and I think that's probably because I think the narrow gauge scene probably has a lot to thank for the railway series for almost bringing it to the forefront, because I think it could have been easily forgotten over the years, or less publicized if it was left to its own devices. But I think that the railway series massively gave this sort of leg up to narrow gauge, not only the heritage movement of it, and obviously with Audrey working at the Talaclin,
yeah,
but also it gave us something where we did actually have something we could reference it to produce models of it in the future. And I don't think we would have a narrow gauge or a scene as big as the 009 scene now if it wasn't for the narrow gauge books.
yeah. I agree completely. The fact that I mean, it used to just be kits as well. The recent sort of say recent, has it been about 10 years that they've been out? The Bachman ones might not even be that long, but
Yeah, I don't think you're far off.
yeah. So that's I mean, some people have bought them to turn into the real locos. um, but yeah, that's definitely been a big influence on 009 modelling.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, I think so. A lot of people do love that sort of thing. I think that's going back to George, when he obviously does his Chorus and his Talaclin style models, but he's done the Scarlowy stuff as well. And I think that's the attraction that comes to his channel. People want to see those models, and it's sort of inspiring and influences you to find out about the real engines they're based on, doesn't it? Last question then for the old quick fire, which wasn't as quick as we anticipated. But what's the one engine you wished made it to the small screen?
One engine. I mean, the Coldy Fell engines we've already mentioned. That would have been cool. Although, like you say, I do quite like the fact that they weren't in the TV show. Keeps them separate. I'm going to say, just going back to the Crosspatch book, would be Neil, the S&M box loco, is the first loco that Scarlowy meets on Sodor. And I think he says he's ugly but kind.
Yeah, that's Sodor Midland, not a fetish he's got, by the way.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, I have to clarify that all the time. Yes, Neil, the Sodor and Midland box loco. That's what I'd love to have seen in the TV show.
Cool. Yeah, that's a good choice. Yeah, no, I like him. It's an interesting locomotive, isn't it? And
Yeah.
Sam, you got a choice?
So my choice, hopefully this counts, because I like to stretch what I'm actually supposed to be doing. But I believe we've not classed this as the railway series because I know they appeared in the CGI series, but I actually really, really wanted to see the miniature railway engines appear in the TV series in the actual model form of the series.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
That's yeah, they came in CGI, which was really cool. That was probably one of the better things from the CGI.
Yes,
Um,
they did the
is that they
story,
brought those back,
didn't they?
but they didn't do Jock the New Engine, and I loved Jock the New Engine because of the well, being one of the first books I got. That's one that they should bring out. I don't know how it would work in. It could be double O models maybe because they filmed on gauge one, and the narrow gauge locos were O gauge. So I'm wondering if a 15-inch gauge would be double O. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that
would
would
have,
make sense.
I would have guessed something like that. Yeah,
I couldn't
yeah,
remember the name of them, but it was Mike, Bert, and Rex. That's correct, isn't it?
yeah.
Yes.
What about you, James?
Bear. I think he didn't get much involvement in the books, but I always quite liked the fact that there was this other big diesel that was on the railway, and he just seemed to be a bit of a background character, really. I mean, he got the one story in Super Rescue and a little bit of a mention at the end of Enterprising Engines, and but probably the reason why he didn't make it to the TV series. But yeah, always felt it was unjustly unfair that Bear never made it. Although we did get an Ertl model, although they did him in blue rather than green. But
I thought Bear was blue in the books.
he starts off because he's a British Rail um, engine in tops livery, and then Fat Controller buys him and puts him back into BR green. Right, so that's the quick fire round, or was meant to be quick, but we got some good answers. I like it. Finally, then, before we go, I thought I'd just ask the question that, if these books had never existed, do you think your love of railways would be the same as it is today?
No.
Simple answer.
Ironically, what's meant to be quite a serious and down to earth question is very much so a case of it is the quick fire answer because I was also going to do the same thing as Tom and just be like, no, I don't think I would have a love of well, I don't think I'd have a love of railways like I have now if it wasn't for the books.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same situation. It's one of those things when you grow up with it, and that world, especially for steam railways, is one of those things that didn't exist when I was growing up, other than heritage railways. But I don't think I think I went to heritage railways as a child because of the books and the TV series that came from it. So they'd have Thomas Days at Neem Valley Railway, which was one of the closer ones to where I grew up, and we'd go there, and the books would be on sale in the shop. So you luckily get a book or get a little flag with Thomas on it. And I think it is one of those things. If they hadn't existed, then I wouldn't have gone to the heritage railways, and the TV show wouldn't have, been my extra parent growing up. It was probably the same for a lot of people. So I think, yeah, it definitely wouldn't. The love of railways wouldn't be the same if they hadn't existed.
I think they're that nostalgia of train spotting in the 50s and 60s that we never got to experience, aren't they?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, they make you fall in love with railways because it's not so much that it's a children's story about talking engines. It's that whole, like, again, back to that world building. It's that whole world of what exists, and apart from the faces, these are real engines, really, and the adventures that they get up to were real events. They really did happen on railways, and you do sort of learn a bit of history from it, a bit of understanding.
You learn about the heritage railways as well. They did so much for the heritage railway movement. I think people do say, "Oh God, not another Thomas the Tank Engine day" or whatever. But if you think about it, a lot of the heritage railways, I don't think they would be running today if it weren't for Thomas Days. The money, not just the money that they bring in, and the kids that come into it, but that just the fact that there is a whole generation of people who love Thomas, who love railways because of Thomas and the Railway Series books. That's the only way that these heritage railways are going to survive. And even Sam mentioned earlier about with the Tanaclin, Audrey volunteered on it himself, and then he wrote books as a way to advertise the railways. Uh, same with the Bluebell Railway, and then later on the Dean Forest with the Christopher Audrey books. So they were done as a way to advertise the railways and to get people to them, to to support them. So definitely did a lot for the Heritage Railway movement.
Oh, definitely, and it works as well, doesn't it? Because my son, he whenever we go down to his nan's in Sussex, we've got to go to the Blue Rail Railway. We have to go to the Blue Rail
Yeah,
Railway because he wants to see Stepney. He wants to go and see Stepney, and the great thing at the moment is that, well, don't know, depends how you want to look at it. Is Stepney is just sat in the shed, and you can go in the cab, and I can't get him out. As soon as he's in the cab of Stepney, that's it. The
and
last
he's got the face on as well.
yeah,
That's an important thing. It's, I mean, there was the whole thing between not Mattel, but whoever owned it before, and there were some legal issues about them, the Heritage Railways using the Thomas characters. I know there was something about the Talaclin Railway and the Brittlecroft Company saying, "Oh, you can't use the faces," and they'd obviously they'd had an agreement long before the Brittlecroft Company came along.
yeah.
But I think it was the same on with Stepney as well.
It was, yeah, and the Dean Valley with the Thomas that you mentioned, because
Yes, yeah, that's the original Thomas. That is the one that was named Thomas by Audrey, and that'd be cool. That'd be a cool model, actually. I've seen someone create one of the Neem Valley Railway Thomases before. I don't know if they 3D printed it. I can't remember. It was on YouTube.
yeah,
But that would be, if a manufacturer brought that out, that would be so popular.
yeah, I really like that. Just that look at that tank engine itself. It is available in kit form, but yeah, if it came out ready to run form, I'm trying to think what locomotive it is now. But I think it's an Andrew Barclay of some description.
Yeah,
It's a very cool looking engine. But yeah, as we say again, like it was an original Awardry Thomas, and because of that, there's nothing that the TV companies can do about them advertising him as Thomas, which I think is great.
yes,
So, and it saddens me that these things were built for the delights of children, and as we say, this gets people into the world of railways because, like ourselves, once you're in that world of railways, so many more benefits for other companies. It will sell you toys. We all have the Thomas the Tank Engine train sets. We all bought them. We all have the Thomas models. Um, these things go hand in hand, and when one of them, when these companies get greedy and they try and gouge these small railways of every penny they can, they stop doing these Thomas days, and then the children stop going to the railways, and then the love of railways
yeah.
dies out, and
I don't think I've seen a Thomas Day. I've been to a few railways around here, Great Central, like when they have the special days, and the ones that are being advertised are like Bluey or Dinosaur Days, and these things that Peppa Pig. Yeah, it's a shame really because I mean you don't want. I mean Thomas has changed. We can't get around the fact that Thomas for the last probably 5 or 6 years has turned into like a baby show. It's an animated thing that's nothing like the original. There's nothing like the original books, definitely, but nothing like the original model series. So I think, yeah, that's probably part of the reason that the Heritage Railways aren't associating them with that anymore. But it is a real shame if they stop the day out with Thomas and things for the fact that the TV shows change, then it'll obviously have a detrimental effect on the Heritage Railways.
Definitely. That's it's a Hudswell Clark locomotive.
Oh, okay.
Of what we want. So, any manufacturers listening, if you have managed to keep your ear to the podcast this week and not so
You never know. It might be announced. It might be announced today on the 12th of May.
Well, that'd be a good one, wouldn't it? I mean, that'd be
Yeah.
great. But yeah, no, I think it would be a shame. It is like you say, they go hand in hand. They influence each other. As you say, like the Talaclin doesn't need a Thomas Day to attract people to that railway anymore because once you know the books and once you know which railway it is, you will go to the Talaclin just because you know that it is the Scarloey in disguise. You know,
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be the Awardery Extravaganza days. I know they do very well when they do have those days.
they. I was about to say the Order Extravaganza Day because I know the guys who run it, and I think I don't think they'll mind me saying, but over that weekend they might take more than they do in quite a few other weekends put together. You know, there is still a lot of interest in it, and thankfully that's one of the things where Mattel have worked with the railway to allow to have their models on display and stuff. So they are open to working with these things. So
Yeah.
I won't talk Mattel down in that respect. It's just sort of the other railways where there's kind of too much influence over what can be done. I mean, there's been like, not that I read it, but the Daily Mail headlines about Fat Controller's not allowed to be called the Fat Controller at Heritage Railway. It's daft, there's all these things that get Thomas in the headlines for the wrong reasons, and it's a shame, really. Yeah, I think just have some Thomas days. Put some faces on all your engines, like when I used to go to the Neem Valley when I was 5, and they had faces on the diesel shunters and all these things. I don't think they're able to do that now without licensing every
I think
phase.
I think the thing is they'd probably be getting so much more free publicity for what is the current iteration of the Thomas TV series. So obviously, we've gone away from the books here, so apologies to those of you listening. But I think
Don't worry, they're not listening anymore at this stage.
They've gone by now.
It would just be free publicity. Like they would be doing you a favor, like to have this, because that you'd have, even if it's somebody who isn't necessarily into it, but the parent was or the grandparent was, and then they can effectively go show this thing and they go, look, we can go and watch this on the telly now and go watch it. And I think that would probably be something that would be good for them. Like I don't know statistics and stuff like that. I can't imagine that the new Thomas style series has anywhere near the numbers that it used to have. And I think it's a crying shame that I quite enjoyed, like when my daughter was younger, we used to watch the CGI series because they were the ones that were readily available on streaming services way more than the original model series. And I quite enjoy. I thought they were right. Obviously, they're not as, but I mean, compared to the new thing, it's that is bad, really, really bad.
It's for a different market. It must be because my son won't watch that one.
No, my daughter either.
No, it's not interested because that's not. And the trains don't behave the way that trains behave. They can jump off the tracks. They can go. I don't understand why they need rails when they could just jump off the rails and just go wander into the forest. Why the hell have someone gone out of their way to build that permanent way? Don't need it.
Can you imagine Audrey watching it?
Well,
he didn't even like Henry stopping in the forest.
I was going to say.
Oh dear.
So on that, I think it's fair to say that none of us hate the books. I think we all really, really enjoy the books. I mean, I've had the anthology for in the front of it says to Sam from Grandma and Grandad Christmas '97 in it. So I was nearly 10 and still really into the Thomas franchise when I was younger.
When you were only 3 foot tall.
Yeah, well, I mean 2.5, please.
Sorry.
I was trying to remember what the actual height of a hobbit is. But I think it's something that has stuck with all three of us at least. And I have spoken to people who, and I've said this before in the past, my big influence and what I model is diesel electrics and a very modern era style of model railways. But like we just said, I wouldn't be here, I don't think, in this hobby if it wasn't for the original Thomas series books, which started everything. And if you look at everything that's come out of those books and everything that's been done with them, we live in a much better world because of it. Shall we end it with that? And I also really like, they're completely absurd, but some of the fan theories, or like the adults having a fun time sort of, because
definitely. There's I hate the word fandom, but there is a massive Thomas fandom out there.
Oh, big time.
Yeah, YouTube, you just have to look at some of the channels. I mean, The Unlucky Tug is a friend of mine, Nick, and he's, over 100,000 subscribers, and he just does videos about Thomas. They're great videos, but there's so many people who love these things. There's a guy, Caleb Train. I think he's got 400,000 subscribers, and he recreates scenes from Thomas and the Railway series in Double O. Amazing model work and filming and stuff. But it's just people like that, that there's so many people who are into this, and it's not, toddlers who watching the new TV show. It's grown adults from, our age and younger, and sometimes older as well. It's crazy the sort of fandom that's out there and the love for these books.
I think I said to James in the past that if it wasn't for the fact of how much I really loved Henry the Green Engine as a character and as a type of loco, I said to James, I don't think I would be as interested in the Black Five as I am. Whereas actually, that's probably one of my favourite steam locos of all time. I think it's a great model, and if it wasn't for Henry, which when we had the Ertl toys when I was younger was always my favourite one to play with, I don't know if I'd be as into it as I am now.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, my Great Western influence definitely comes from Duck. The fact that I love Duck, and one of my favourite characters, and I think I grew up in a house where my dad had an interest in model railways. He had a couple of the Railway Series books growing up, from what he told me, but I don't know how much of an influence was to him there, but there would have been that in my life, but maybe not the same path as what I followed now because of the Railway Series, because of the stories. I probably would have been more interested in Midland engines, maybe, because that's sort of where I grew up and that's what my dad was interested in. But yeah, it's definitely sort of shaped our lives, and as you say, Tom, with the fandom, I think it's shaped a lot of people's lives, and I think we're all very, very grateful and very thankful for such a wonderful collection of books that started out, 80 years ago today.
Absolutely.
So there we are. That's yeah. Thank you very much, the Reverend Awardry, for your wonderful stories. Right then, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, me and Sam will. We don't do social media shout-outs anymore. I don't know what we're going to do, but we'll do something.
You there? Oh, me? Do you like model railways? Yes, that's why I'm listening to the Model Rail Replacement podcast. Do you like comedy? No, that's why I'm listening to the Model Rail Replacement podcast. If you like model railways and comedy, head over to BuggleskellyStation.com. From Dad's Army to Will Hay, Laurel and Hardy to the island of Sodor. Add a comedy cameo to your model railway today. All right, thanks. Buggleskelly Station. You won't be wasting your time.
Well, that was a lovely chat with Tom, wasn't it? And good to have him back on the show. So, I hope people enjoyed that. And we didn't go to Thomas the Tank Engine TV series or anything like that, did we?
No,
I don't think we did.
No, we did keep away from it, and we were very careful about how we went with it. So yeah, good job. Well done, everyone.
Yes. Maybe we should have Tom back on again at some point. Maybe you could do your adverts. Right, shall we get to the exhibition diary?
Yes, let's have a look. See what's on this week.
Right, then, right. As of this week, if you're listening on the correct week, approaching then this weekend, the Saturday the 17th and Sunday the 18th of May, there are the following exhibitions. We have the Bolton Model Railway Society Open Day on the 17th. This is the Bolton Marketplace Shopping Centre first floor, next door to H&M, Knowlesy Street, Bolton, Lancashire. On the 17th as well as the Liverpool and West Lancs O-Gauge Group, having an open day on the first floor of St Monica's Parish Centre, Stewart Avenue in Bottle, Merseyside. The Moray Coast Gauge O-Gauge Group is the Berghead Model Exhibition at Berghead Community Hall in Grant Street, Berghead, Moray. Crawley Signal Box Preservation Society is having another open day on the 17th. That's at the Crawley Signal Box in Crawley. Ely District Model Railway Club is having the Ely Model Railway Exhibition on the 17th at Ely College in Downham Road, Ely, Cambridgeshire. Gauge Free Society annual show and AGM at the Rufus Centre, Steppingley Road in Flitwick, Bedfordshire. That's on the 17th as well. Also on the 17th, Brambleton Model Railway Club Outdoor Model Railway Open Day event at Highfield Oval, Ambrose Lane in Harpenden, Hertfordshire. The Launceston Model Rail Group is having an open day on the 17th at St Stephen's Church Hall in Roydon Road, Launceston, Cornwall. Merseyside and South West Lancs NG Group is having a group open day on the 17th at the Corpus Christi Church Hall, Alfred Street, Rainford, Merseyside. Heart of England Aerogauge Modellers are having their monthly meeting at the usual spot of the 22nd Rugby Scout Hut. Trying to combine words there. Rugby Scout Hut, the Kent Hill Morton Rugby, Warwickshire. Weymouth Model Railway Association is having a spring open day at the Upwell Memorial Hall, Victorian Avenue, Weymouth, Dorset. And the 17th and 18th, Salisbury and South Wiltshire Railway Society is having the Salisbury RailX 2025 Model Rail Exhibition. This is at the Fruxton Centre at Fruxton Circuit, Andover in Hampshire. Jarrow Model Railway Club is having a model rail exhibition all weekend at the Primrose Community Association at Lamberton Terrace at Jarrow, Tyne and Ware. Also this weekend is the Syston Model Railway Society Leicester Model Railway Show at Roots at Thorpe Farm, Barkby, Thorpe, Leicester, Leicestershire. Vestiniog and West Highland Railways, the Model Railway Workshop at you always have to write things in Welsh, don't you? Glan Fun. I hope I said that right. High Street in Portmaddock, Gwynedd. So I got Portmaddock right at least, and it said Porth my dog. So there we are. 17th and 18th is also the Bradford Model Railway Club in Queensbury Model Railway Show. Sunday the 18th is the Model Railway Quest at Hastings Model Rail Show, the Hastings Academy, Rye Road, Hastings, West Sussex. 18th also sees Stow Rail Organising Group, Stow Rail 2024, at St Edward's Hall the Square, Stow on the Wold, Gloucestershire. I forgot about that one. I can go to that one. Something for me to do. Also on the 18th is the first Ashcombe Scout Group Family Model Railway Show at Kentstow Village Hall, Crooks Lane and Weston-super-Mare, Somerset. And the 23rd and 24th is the Garber Area Model Trains. Last train to Whitby, 60 years. Oh, I've gone too far. That's for the week after. Don't worry about that one. I'll tell you about that one next week. We're all done. We're all done for the exhibition diary.
Yay! Well done, James. Just to clarify to anyone listening to this, I did offer to do the intro and outro so that James could save his voice. So if anyone sat there thinking that I've been a really mean friend, I did offer to help.
It's easy to say that when we're recording and you edit it, and so you can keep this bit in with your lies.
Yeah, that's right.
He did, but I'm a trooper, and I came to work. I mean, this work. The other work I didn't go to because I lost my voice, and safety critical communication with no voice, not very good.
Just stand there with an air horn. Train coming.
It's Morse code down the phone. Tap on it. And hopefully they understand what I'm doing. But there we go. Right. We've got Call Attention Corner, which I think this one sort of counts as our first for Call Attention Corner. It's a little bit early, but Gary Day from the Risborough and District Model Railway Club has emailed us to tell us about RailX 2025, which will be held at the Aylesbury Sports Centre near Stoke Mandeville Stoke Mandeville Hospital. And it's back in the sports hall as well, apparently. Lots of layouts. There's even a promotional video on YouTube, including footage from yours truly. So go have a little look for that. And if you can get to the exhibition, go have a look. It is a great day out. And as I say, that should be for the weekend of the 23rd and 24th of May. So, yeah, that's our first Call Attention Corner. There we are. And we get a little bell ring for calling attention in the signal box.
Yeah, I'll try. I'll pretend I'm going to bother.
There we go. Right then. Well, Sam, that's all for us this week. If people want to send you abuse, how do they abuse you?
If you want to abuse me in both the good and the bad way, you can get hold of me on Instagram at emperors_path. You can find me on YouTube with sporadic videos. You can find me on Facebook at Emperor's Path. I'm trying. I'm really trying. James, how can they get hold of you?
Well, it's still Western Signalman, not YouTube. And Western Signalman on Instagram. And I don't have the email because I still can't get into that. And then we've got, obviously, the Model Rail Replacement Podcast on Instagram, on email, Model Rail RP, and you'll need that email to let us know about your Call Attention Corner. So that's modelrailrp@outlook.com. If you want to be on the Call Attention Corner, you can just drop us an email, tell us about what you're up to, or even better, if you just send us a link to a private YouTube video, we can then use that footage and put you on the podcast. So there is that there. And tell us about what you're doing, anything you're doing, anything you're working on, anything you just want to call attention to. Apart from that, yeah, I think we're also on Facebook now. And we're also on our own YouTube channel. So, yeah, the Model Rail Replacement Podcast has taken over the internet. But that's all for this week. Next week, hopefully, we're talking to TMC, which we tried to record this week. But obviously, we couldn't record it because I couldn't talk. Fingers crossed we can get that one done in time. We'll have to find out next week if we get it done or not. Till then, hopefully, we've been entertaining, informative, and have replaced your model railway, if only just for a little bit. I've been James, and with me has been Sam. Thanks for listening.
This service terminates here. Please ensure you take all of your personal belongings with you.
Hello, listeners. We've got some very exciting news. Do you want to be part of the podcast? Do you want to join the team? Well, an exciting opportunity has come up to allow you to be part of the Model Rail Replacement Podcast. And here's Sam with the details.
This episode is brought to you by Patreon. A huge thank you to our Patreons for their support. If you'd like to help support the show, you can head over to Patreon and search Model Rail Replacement Podcast, where you can show your support and be part of the team.
Hurry, there's unlimited places.